Hey guys, Chef Scott here. Welcome to the channel. I'm glad you're here. I have a cool recipe for you this week. We are making chocolate peanut butter cookies. We're gonna be starting with a classic peanut butter cookie recipe. It's one I have been using for years and years. And then we're going to be filling it with a chocolate peanut butter ganache. That's how we're gonna get the chocolate in there. So when you break it apart, you get all that gooey ganache. It's gonna be really good. If you'd like a printable recipe, you can find that in the description below, as well as any tools that I might be using this week. As far as recipe notes, I really don't have any except for one, and that is to use junky peanut butter. Now, I'm all for organic, healthy eating when I'm outside of the pastry kitchen, but the fact of the matter is some of those junk brands of peanut butter that are full of sugar just make the best cookies. This is not a time to be health conscious. Also, those peanut butters have palm oil and stabilizers in them that keep it really firm as a product and make a better bake. Sometimes if you use the organic stuff, it's really oily and that can make the dough really thin. So if you have to use a healthier brand of peanut butter, you can go ahead and do that. Just make sure it's the no stir kind, because that still has some palm or coconut oil in it to help be a little bit more stable. That's really the only note. Otherwise, this is a pretty standard recipe. So we're gonna get started right now.
We're kicking this recipe off by combining the room temperature butter, both sugars, vanilla, and salt, and mixing until well combined. Next up, add the eggs and mix until well emulsified. Add the peanut butter and mix some more. While the peanut butter is mixing, I like to sift my flour, baking powder, and baking soda. This type of light multitasking saves a lot of time during a recipe. Once the peanut butter is well incorporated, you can add the sifted dry ingredients. I use the guard the mixing bowl came with in the beginning of this step just to keep any flour from flying out of the bowl before it starts to incorporate into the dough. Mix until the dough is just combined, which usually takes less than a minute. Roll the dough between 1/2 inch or 13mm casting bars. I start by flouring my hands and pressing it into an approximately even shape. Next, I like to use plastic wrap to cover the dough to keep it from sticking to the rolling pin, and then to keep it from drying out in the refrigerator. As long as the rolling pin is touching both guides, you'll have an evenly thick slab of dough. Remove the guides and chill the dough for at least 2 hours. Once chilled, punch the dough into rings. I like big cookies, so I'm using a 2 3/4 inch or 7 centimeter ring. These will be the bottoms of the cookies, so I'm only punching out 8 of them and then using the rest of the dough for the tops. You could divide the dough before rolling any of it out, but I've always just preferred doing it this way. Remove the rounds so they can go back in the refrigerator. Consolidate the remaining dough and this time roll it between 1/4 inch or 6mm bars using the same method as before. Cover both doughs and place them in the refrigerator. To make the ganache, start by bringing the heavy cream and glucose to a simmer. I'm just using a microwave for that. Add the chocolate and peanut butter and let the mixture sit for just a few minutes. This will let the chocolate melt. Hand blend or whisk until the ganache is emulsified, which means nice and shiny. I happen to have a silicone mold that's just the right size for my cookies, and a link to it is in the description below. I added the ganache to a piping bag and simply cast about 1/4 inch of ganache into each cavity. If you don't have a mold that will work, you can cast the ganache as a sheet and cut rounds of it once it's set, like the cookie dough we just worked on. Either way, your disc should be 2 inches or 5 centimeters in diameter. If using a mold, give it a little tap after filling the cavities to even the ganache and get rid of the dreaded air bubbles. Then it's ready for the freezer until it's set. While everything is chilling and or freezing, we'll make the chocolate garnish. Set up a sheet of acetate on a half sheet of plexiglass or a flat sheet pan. I'm using water to hold the sheet down and then a dough scraper to squeegee excess water from the sheet. This creates a really strong seal. Make sure to dry the setup thoroughly because water is always the enemy of chocolate decoration. Next, it's time to temper the chocolate. Here, I'm using the same 66% chocolate as in the ganache. I have a detailed video on the tempering process that I encourage you to check out if you are new to tempering or would like to see my method. Once tempered, cast a thin layer of chocolate onto the acetate. I start with a thick strip of chocolate on one end and then spread the chocolate from that point. Using two hands is always going to give you a more even product. I decided a little too late to add a bit more chocolate, and that created a rough texture when the set and semi-set chocolate mixed, but the face-up side won't be seen in the final product, so it's not a big deal. The finished layer of chocolate should be about 1/32 to 1/16 of an inch, or 0.7 to 1.5 millimeters. I don't measure this, it's just a matter of practice. When the chocolate is semi-set, mark the edges of the acetate sheet with a dull paring knife by running it along the outside edge. This shows you how much room you have to work with for your decorations. Punch discs of chocolate using a 3-inch or 7.5 centimeter ring. Let the chocolate set in a cool room. Once the discs have set, you can remove them from the acetate and keep them at the ready on a sheet of parchment paper. Carefully press the inserts of ganache into the 1/2-inch thick discs of dough. I press them just over halfway into the dough, leaving enough cookie dough below them to avoid leaks during baking. Place the 1/4-inch thick discs over the ganache and gently press around the edges to seal the top and bottom cookie dough together. These make large cookies, so I only bake 4 to a half sheet pan, and although I don't show it here, I stagger them apart from one another before baking, as always. Trim the edges of each cookie using the same 2 3/4-inch ring cutter. As soon as the cookies come out of the oven, place a chocolate disc in the center of each, letting the heat of the cookie melt it. I love the look of this so much I thought I'd show it twice. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you give these cookies a try. Thanks for watching.